Denver Broncos pass rusher Randy Gregory could make his return this Sunday against Colt McCoy in the Arizona Cardinals. Why does Gregory want to play this Sunday more than anything? We'll dive into on today's episode of the show. Plus, the Broncos, the banged-up Broncos, are getting some guys back in action. And outside of that, Sayre and I, we take a look. Which players have the most to prove with just 4 games remaining on the season? We dive into that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome into a brand new episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos country for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, every single day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you scan that QR code at the top of the corner. That way, if you want to listen to Locked On Broncos on the go, it pulls up how you can listen to us on every single platform, from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantlyorange.com. Sayre, my friend, this has been a very interesting week, right? Because we've been really focusing on, okay, is Russell Wilson going to clear concussion protocols? You're going to, maybe have a chance to play on Sunday. Lost in all that is the fact that the Broncos have several guys returning. And I was at practice on Wednesday at the UCL Training Center, Sayre, and we saw Randy Gregory dressed out. We saw Billy Turner dressed out. Like, Broncos getting some good news. But I want to focus here on Randy Gregory, because this has been, I think you and I have both seen this on Twitter, and we've both seen it in the YouTube comment sections. A lot of people are like, oh, Randy Gregory, oh, he's just so injury prone. Like, obviously, like, the injury is not good. But Gregory gave a very, very interesting take to our good friend Mike Kliss on Thursday at the UC Health Training Center about him wanting to play, because the Broncos activated his window on Wednesday. He wants to play on Sunday.
Exactly. And coming off the heels of the team being eliminated, I think his words hold some serious weight. He said, like you said to Mike Kliss, he told him, I've shut it down enough. I've missed a lot of time, and I'm to the point where I want to help where I can. And look, Randy Gregory, when he signed on, he didn't sign on to a, division champion playoff team. He signed on to the last place Denver Broncos. So he's got to be part of the solution now of getting this team out. We've seen over the last few weeks since the Bradley Chubb trade, we've seen a lot of different guys get reps off the edge. We've seen a lot of guys show varying levels of productivity. Not much consistency, though, off the edge, Cody. We've seen bursts from, Nick Bonito and Baron Browning, and even Jonathan Cooper of late, and Jacob Martin when he first got to the team. They all showed flashes, but we need Randy Gregory out there to show that he can be that consistently dominant guy that we had seen in the first few weeks of the season. Because remember, he was maybe not racking up the sacks, but he was forcing fumbles. He was making an impact on the game when he was out there. So it's important for him to be out there. I think he's right. He's right about that. It's not a thing where you're like, all right, let's just shut him down for the season. No, we need to see him out there playing. We need to see him out there with his teammates making an impact. And just like with so many other players, it's important to know what you're going to be getting for the rest of the season and into next season from a guy like Randy Gregory.
And I know you and I have kind of weighed the pros and cons. Like, if Randy Gregory is able to return, do you just shut him down because you invested this money in him? Do you want, like, the Broncos being eliminated, do you want to risk him having, like, another injury, right? Like, I think we can all look at the Kyler Murray situation right now and say, oh, Kyler just got paid a lot of money. Now he's going to miss a majority of next season. Obviously, he's not going to play in this weekend's game against the Broncos. But, like, for Gregory, I think you're right. Like, they have missed his impact since week 4, and he was having such a huge impact on the defense. And the moment that the Broncos traded Bradley Chubb, remember, you and I were talking about, okay, well, they're banking on Randy Gregory returning. They're banking on Baron Browning being that guy, the starter opposite. Well, because Randy Gregory's his knee recovery is taking a little bit longer than he had hoped for. It's been Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning. But, Sayre, we watched some of these other teams that the Broncos have gone against that have really, really good disruptors at outside linebacker or defensive end. Guys like Max Crosby, for example. You go back to even the Carolina Panthers and Brian Burns, just those matchups there. And it's easy because we're sitting there like, the Broncos don't have a guy like that. And Randy Gregory, in my opinion, Sarah, I feel like can be that guy. And I think we saw that through the first 4 weeks of the season. He's a disruptive, dominant force. Denver has not had that since he's been out.
And he's going to be somebody that comes in a game like, this game against the Cardinals. We talked about it on Crossover Thursday, right? It's not necessarily a premier matchup at this point in the year, especially if we're talking about Colt McCoy versus potentially Brett Rippon, depending on what the status is of Russell Wilson. It's not a household matchup by any means, but I think there's a lot on the line in this game for players and for coaches, obviously, and for the ownership group in Denver. They want to see a good product being put out on the field. The Broncos have not been good at home this year, Cody, so it's an opportunity to go out and win a home game before you hit the road to go play Los Angeles and Kansas City and then finish out the year against the Chargers at home. You need to finish strong, especially at home, and I think Randy Gregory is that guy. Okay, you're going up against Colt McCoy, right? It's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But if Randy Gregory can go out there and show that burst, if he can go out and win his matchups, make plays on third downs, help the Broncos close out a potential victory, those are the things that you do need to see. I mean, it's just like we talked about this right before we started the show. It's kind of like in the preseason, right? There's not really obviously, there's no playoff implications. The Broncos can't make the playoffs, but you're in evaluation mode. You need to see good things from your best players. And Randy Gregory is one of those guys. He's a guy that the Broncos are banking on. He'll be with the team next season, and he's going to be counted on to be one of those key matchup type players that they can rely on to say late in games, we believe that he can be our closer, or when we need a big turnover, he can go get the quarterback in less than 2 or 3 seconds. He can be that guy to go out there and make that big play. I'm excited to see him back, Cody. I think regardless, we talked about this just a couple days ago after the Kansas City loss and Russell Wilson getting injured. It's like, or maybe it was right before, we talk about what is to be excited about at this point in the Broncos season. Like, things have been going so badly offensively. You have so many injuries. I think Randy Gregory coming back to the field, Cody, is something to be excited about because he's one of your best players, and it gives you an opportunity to evaluate one of your best guys over the final 4 games.
Well, I think maybe it changes the perspective, hopefully, from Broncos country about him. He's like, look, I've shut it down long enough. I've been on the shelf long enough. I'm ready to get off the shelf. I want to come back and I want to play. I think that'll buy some good faith in the eyes of Broncos country. 4 games remain for this Broncos team. We'll see if Randy Gregory will play. The Broncos activated his 21-day window on Wednesday. There's 24 days left essentially in the season. Will he play this Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals? That is a big time question we'll dive into continuously throughout this week, leading up through kickoff against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. But coming up here in just a moment, Broncos country, we have the banged up Broncos getting some help back. They've also played some guys on injured reserve. It's been some roster shuffling for the Broncos this week. What does everything look like here with just 4 games remaining? You get that on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But this episode of the show is brought to you by our friends at Tommy John. And don't make your loved ones face the dead of winter in old t-shirts, ancient underwear, and ratty sweats. Help them fight cold with Cozy. Give the gift of Tommy John. In Tommy John, you're that much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. Shop Tommy John's Wrap It Up sale right now and give the gift of comfort to everyone on your list, including yourself, with new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, and pajamas. With over 18 million pairs sold, giving Tommy John has become a holiday tradition. 97% of women and men love getting a gift from Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. So celebrate soft this season with the gift of new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, or pajamas. And every gift's backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Hurry to Tommy John's Wrap It Up sale and get 30% off everything plus free shipping at TommyJohn.com/LockedOn. Order now so your gifts arrive before the holidays. 30% off plus free shipping at TommyJohn.com/LockedOn. TommyJohn.com/LockedOn. See site for details. With 4 games remaining on the season, the Denver Broncos should be getting some players back from injury as they hope to close out the season on a high note, despite the fact that they have been officially eliminated from the playoffs. Thank you so much, Broncos country, for tuning in, making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Free and available everywhere you get your podcasts in audio format, or whether you watch on YouTube. We appreciate you so much, Broncos country. Don't forget to comment if you're watching on YouTube. Like the video as well. Comment for the algorithm so this gets pushed out to more members of Broncos country. All right, Sayre, look, the theme this season has really been the banged up Broncos, right? Obviously, like the disappointing win-loss stature There's been so many games lost by players being out, right? You can maybe make an argument in several games. Well, if the Broncos have this guy, they may win this game. There's been a lot of that there. We just talked about Randy Gregory and him kind of chomping at the bit to get back this Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. I was very surprised on Wednesday, Sayre, going out to practice at the Pat Bowlen Fieldhouse. It was indoors for team stretch. They were outside for practice. Guess who we saw back in uniform with a helmet, a jersey, doing stretches? Offensive tackle Billy Turner. Now, Sayre, obviously we know he signed a one-year deal with the Broncos this past offseason, missed a good portion of the season, came back against the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football, suffered a knee injury, obviously against the Carolina Panthers. And all of a sudden, I mean, everyone's now thinking to themselves, or I think it was Tennessee. It was Tennessee or Carolina, one of the teams that was blue. I was at the stadium. It was one of those things. But now Billy Turner, like I was really surprised there to see him back because I think we all thought like, okay, hey, he got a knee injury, the same knee he had surgery on. Oh, they're probably going to shut him down for the season. He was stretching, he was jogging, he was doing his normal thing. So, I mean, I guess this could be some good news for the Broncos who could be getting guys back on top. Russell Wilson doing a lot of activity, seemingly ahead of schedule inside the NFL concussion protocol.
Right. I mean, Russell, we saw video footage of him out there running around with his teammates before practice. We heard reports, and I'm sure you saw, Cody, of him doing some light throwing work, obviously all within the parameters of the NFL's concussion protocol. So it's not like Russ is out there doing more than he's supposed to be, or like the Broncos are allowing him to do more than he's supposed to be. So he's out there getting ready. I think he is going to make a big push to play, right? I think that obviously you look towards this game, like it's meaningless in terms of playoff implications, but it means a lot to these guys. It means a lot for them to finish strong no matter what, because you don't want to have a terrible taste in your mouth going into the offseason, right? And Russell Wilson, you know, it's going to be fascinating to see, but obviously having Billy Turner back will help tremendously. If he's able to go out and play, I think he's a good player, obviously, right? And he can play a multitude of positions. So if Reisner's not able to go at left guard, maybe Billy Turner slides in there, or right tackle. Does he start over Cam Fleming, or is he just an emergency guy? One way or another, Cody, I think it's important is the right word that I'm looking for, to see the Broncos getting healthier and healthier here as the season goes along, because injuries have been the unfortunate story. Like you mentioned, I mean, you could point to any number of games and any number of different players throughout the season that if you had this player, this game could have gone differently. You could even look at this Kansas City game without Courtland Sutton, how different that game could have been. You know, it doesn't matter at this point. Now we're looking ahead. Getting these guys back, though, it's nice to see. I don't care if there's 4 games left or 3 games left. Getting guys back from injury and seeing them out there being able to play, being healthy enough to play in an NFL game, it's huge.
Broncos country, I mean, there's 4 games left, but you only get the opportunity to watch this team at home 2 more times, right? Like, while the season has been so disappointing and it's so frustrating, I guarantee you we're going to get to the point where you're like, I miss Broncos football. I miss being able to watch football on Sundays. Now, while the season has not given Broncos fans much optimism to say, okay, I'm excited to watch the Broncos on Sunday, I think there are a lot of things like you never know what you have until it's gone, right? So obviously the offseason is going to approach for Denver very, very quickly. We know that there's a lot of things that are going to change. There's a lot of needs that need to be addressed, but enjoy these final 2 home games that Denver will have. You get to see the Arizona Cardinals this weekend, and then for the regular season finale, maybe the Broncos could play playoff spoils to the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, wouldn't that be a nice way to go out this season? I think I would appreciate that, and you know what? You need to find a way to get some momentum and beat the Los Angeles Chargers as well. Then you also play Kansas City and the LA Rams on Christmas on the road. That's going to be some tough challenges right there for Denver. But I want to focus on this. You mentioned like Billy Turner, his ability to play left guard as well, right? Like Dalton Reiser's been limited this week in practice. Where I think you and I are both kind of on the premise of saying, like, what the heck happened when Natani Muti was just claimed by the Las Vegas Raiders? And it just happened because the night before, Sayre, I was at Kareem Jackson's charity event. Natani Muti was there alongside various other Broncos teammates, and it was one of the coolest moments here. And this kind of like puts things into perspective. It's not just about football, folks. Natani Muti was, assigned, a group of kids from the Boys and Girls Club. And the moment that this kid's name got called, he sprinted towards Natani Muti, ran up to him, gave him a big bear hug, and is like, I love you. You're my favorite player. Like, and then the next day he's on a plane to Las Vegas to go play for the Raiders. Like, dang, This kind of sucks, man. It kind of sucks. And obviously, we've seen Luke Wattenberg struggle. I asked Nathaniel Hackett Wednesday at practice about, how do you make sure a guy's confidence like that doesn't, fall, because he's been thrown into some situations this year and hasn't looked the best. And he said, we just got to keep plugging away, keep developing him. And he even alluded, Nathaniel Hackett said, we could have done a better job as coaches of putting him in some better situations. So maybe he's not ready just yet to play left guard and to be a starter in the National Football League. But I think it's good confidence for a guy like Wattenberg to get that. Obviously, you're not going to have Natani Muti, who I thought was like, hey, start Natani for the rest of the season to see what you have from him. Fortunately, we're not going to get that, Sayre.
I know. I was bummed about that. I'm glad you brought that up because really Natani Muti's been a guy that we've kind of been clamoring for a little bit. I mean, to a degree, right? We've been saying like, man, throw him into the starting lineup and see what happens. He's got the athleticism. He's got the raw power and strength. It's going to be a real bummer to see him in silver and black at this point. I don't know what his role is going to be for the Raiders. I don't know how much he's actually even going to play. I don't even know if he's under contract beyond the season. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, I think he did get a raw deal in Denver. And like you mentioned with Wattenberg, I do think the coaching staff could have put him in much better positions in that game. Giving a rookie left guard who's a center, he came into the league as a center. I know he had some versatility, but came in as a center. He's going up against Chris Jones, one of the most, if not the most disruptive interior defensive lineman this whole season in the NFL.
One-on-one, too.
One-on-one. I mean, that's just you're just setting up the guy for embarrassment. You're setting him up to get, a lack of confidence out there. And I'm not saying that Luke Wattenberg is like shook or anything. I don't know. I haven't heard from him in particular, but it's one of those experiences that's just it's a terrible first impression to make on a fan base, for yourself as an NFL player getting out there. I'm really disappointed at the way the Broncos have handled some of their bottom of the roster stuff this year, whether it's Natani Muti, letting him go, whether it's not addressing the wide receiver position appropriately, whether it's the running back position, and kind of just being a little too relaxed in terms of, okay, Melvin Gordon, he'll be all right, or Mike Boone will be coming back soon. There's not much the Broncos can do at certain points in the season, but at the same time, show a little aggressiveness. So I don't like that they didn't get Natani Muti onto the active roster. I'm sure they had an opportunity to at least match the Raiders, and it seems to me, Cody, from the reports that we've seen out there, it seems to me like he decided to leave. It's a bummer to see, Cody. I think that he kind of chose Las Vegas over Denver in the grand scheme of things, which, like you mentioned with that kid to come up to him, it's his favorite player, that speaks to something else too about what we talk about the Broncos and these players having such an impact on people and the things that they do in the community. So that's important to keep in mind, especially this time of year when they're impacting kids that, they're not getting to have that kind of interaction on a day-to-day. It's so valuable for them. So Natani Muti, sad to see him go. Obviously, you don't want that, and you love it. Yeah, mile high salute to him. I thought he did a great job with the opportunities he was given in Denver.
Yeah, we wish we would have saw a little bit more opportunity and look. I mean, he was a guy that was getting first team reps in training camp, and then all of a sudden, he had the knee injury, and then all of a sudden he just like disappeared from Butch Berry's rotation, which, the whole Butch Berry thing, I think there's going to be changes. I think he's going to be one of the first changes that happens, and hopefully they come back to Mike Munchak with the boombox on the shoulder saying, "Baby, come back. You could blame it all on me." And maybe George Payton will take that one here for Mike Munchak coming up in this offseason Broncos country. What are some things and who are some players who have the most to prove with just 4 games remaining on the season? That's something that you're going to get on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But first, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Total Wine & More. In this holiday season, find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from, it's easy to find a new favorite Cabernet or Chardonnay or the perfect gifts for everyone on your list with some help from a friendly guide. And with all the confidence of knowing you found something special for the lowest price. Love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Drink responsibly. Be 21. Which is 4 games remaining on the season. Various players will have a lot to prove in the eyes of Broncos country, but who do Sayre and I have our eyes on in terms of evaluation season? Players who may be on expiring contracts after this year or young players to keep an eye on. Sayre, my friend, let's dive into this. And I think first and foremost, one of the guys that we're all interested in maybe seeing how these final 4 games go, it's the Broncos' Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, Dalton Risner. As we know, he has been on the record saying he has not heard from the Broncos. His agent has not heard from the Broncos regarding a contract extension. I mean, he even mentioned that, it is what it is. It's definitely kind of stings a little bit, but he's a guy that missed, like, it's rare he ever misses a game, right? And he missed last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. You can always ask the question, what would it have been like if he was playing there? But we got to see a lot of good stuff from Natani Muti, who's no longer a Denver Bronco. Outside of that, he does have a chance to play this week against the Arizona Cardinals, as he has been limited in practice this week. What are some things you're looking forward to seeing from Dalton Risner with 4 games remaining?
Yeah, you really just want to see him put together some really good games. He'll get another shot, hopefully, at Chris Jones when the Broncos go to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs. But I think just starting in the immediate, just go out and, regardless if you're limited during the week, go out and have a great game against the Arizona Cardinals, against Vance Joseph's defense, right? So I think Dalton Risner has an opportunity here to kind of prove, just like a number of other guys on this roster, that he's a second contract guy. And I think that there's no question about it, Cody. I'm sure the business of the NFL, we could see him move on at some point, but I'm guessing, this is just a guess, I don't know anything, but I would guess that Dalton Risner, a Colorado native, would probably want to stay with the Denver Broncos if at all possible. And I thought we saw last season, him take a kind of a step forward again under Mike Munchak after, so 2019, his rookie season, he was really good. And then 2020 seemed like he took a bit of a step back. I thought he kind of took a bit of a step back forward then in 2021 under Mike Munchak. And here in 2022, it just kind of seems like the whole offensive line hasn't quite been what we need it to be. I mean, it's been maybe better because Russell Wilson has the time to throw according to the advanced metrics and things like that. And so it's maybe been better than it appears on the hoof. But I think just the eye test to me, Cody, they're not getting any push in the run game. They're not pass protecting well enough, in my opinion, or at least consistently enough. And so I think Risner has a chance to go out there with these final 4 games and just put together something to prove you are worthy of a second contract, even if it is just a 1-year deal to come back and kind of be penciled in as that starting left guard.
Yeah, and I think you and I have talked about it. We envision there's going to be a lot of change in the offensive line. I mean, we think that Garrett Bowles will be back. Obviously, Quinn Miners, we know will be back. But we even question, like, hey, Dalton Risner may or may not be back. Lloyd Cushenberry may or may not be back. And then obviously you have to find your long-term solution at the right tackle position. I'm eager to see what Dalton Risner can do. Because like I said, he's always a guy that is always willing to meet with us, through the good, through the bad. And he always maintains, like, good leadership, good composure. It's just, it's one of those things. He's looking to return to Denver, and we'll see how things play out. But I want to, mention a couple of things too as well. We're looking at some young wide receivers. For me, I want to see how these guys do, because next year, I mean, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, we've alluded to the fact the Broncos maybe could look to trade a wide receiver during the NFL draft, potentially. Cortland Sutton being one of those guys. Tim Patrick's coming back off of ACL injury. Jerry Jeudy, as we talked about, is your number 1 receiver. And the Broncos are sitting KJ Hamler for the rest of the year, so he can come into training camp next year fully healthy, fully ready to go, to get a full head of steam, really on kind of that preparation, to kind of get back to where he needs to be. So it's like guys like Jalen Virgil, undrafted rookie free agent, Brandon Johnson, Montreal Washington, who they drafted in the 5th round. These guys are essentially, I mean, also auditioning for a job, I feel like, going into next year. And how much of that changes when, if Russell Wilson doesn't play on Sunday, or if it's Brett Rippon at quarterback? Like, how do these guys elevate their stock a little bit? I mean, we saw Jalen Virgil and Brandon Johnson, 2 undrafted guys, get their first career touchdowns on the road in some big-time road games for Denver this season. Montreal Washington, we've seen flashes in the return game, but realistically, he has struggled, I'd say, for a good portion of this season. There's a lot of competition at that position. But Sayre, I know you're excited about one position group that you hope to see a little bit more of. We talked about Randy Gregory, but I know you want to see a little bit more from Baron Browning, Nick Bonito, and Jonathan Cooper.
Cody, I am looking forward to watching this edge group for the Denver Broncos with all these young guys out there, and as well as free agent Randy Gregory. And here's the thing. I'll give you my hot take kind of in the pre-offseason stage for, I'm assuming George Paton will be making the calls in the offseason. If I'm George Paton, I'm not touching the edge position early on in the NFL draft. I'm not going after the edge position with big free agent dollars again. And the reason being, you obviously signed Randy Gregory to the big money free agent contract. You use your top pick in the 2022 NFL draft on Nick Bonito. You make the bold move to change Baron Browning, his position from off-ball linebacker to the edge. Then you go out and you get a guy like Jacob Martin at the trade deadline who's under contract next year. You also have Jonathan Cooper under contract next year. Look, I know everybody wants the quickest fix in the NFL today. And I understand, and I'm not saying pass on a really great prospect if he's sitting you straight in the face. If a top 5 or top 10 guy somehow falls to the Broncos pick in the first round, or a first round caliber guy falls to them in round 3, I'm not saying just pass on it for the sake of passing on him. What I am saying is you don't need edge guys. You have the guys that you can evaluate right now, and you have to bank on their development a little bit, right? You have to project some in terms of their development. You can't just say, well, it didn't turn out exactly the way we wanted with Nick Bonito in his rookie year. So that's we're not going to plan on him making any sort of significant contributions in 2023, or the same with Baron Browning. Oh, he wasn't consistent enough setting the edge, things like this. Cody, these are the types of things that get you in really big trouble because the Broncos have such other needs on this roster. They have to be able to go into the 2023 offseason, in my opinion, banking on the projections that they have, the development of these edge guys, these guys getting stronger, better at the point of attack, better at setting the edge. You have to project that, and you have to bank on that. You can't just go out and try to always sign somebody who's proven in that regard. You can't just throw money at stuff. You can't just throw high draft picks at stuff. You've already done that. You've already done those things. You have to be able to see these guys produce. I think these next 4 games are going to be huge for giving the Broncos confidence that at least if there's one position on the roster, at least they can bank on the edge being something that they know they can rely on in 2023.
That is a big hope, and I think hopefully next year, Sayre, hopefully it is Baron Brown and Randy Gregory, your 2 premier guys at edge rusher, and that they're getting to the quarterback at a high rate. Draymond Jones is going to be a free agent. Who knows how everything's going to pan out there? He's also another guy that was banged up and may not play this week against the Arizona Cardinals. But Broncos country, one thing is for certain, Sayre Bedinger and myself will have you covered every single day, every step of the way, for all the Denver Broncos news, content, coverage, and more that you need here on the Locked On Broncos podcast and your favorite audio podcasting platform, or whether you watch on YouTube. We'll find out the status of Russell Wilson as pertains. We might do an emergency episode on that once we get a little more clarity. Would not be surprised if he does play based on what we saw this week on Wednesday's practice, Thursday's practice. We'll see how things go as well here on Friday. Broncos country, thank you so much. We'll see you for the post-game report. Broncos Cardinals on Sunday.